Okay, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of my colleague Elijah Air and myself, Camille Chircano, we'll be presenting on integrity and moral purpose. So before we start our presentation, we have a few questions for you. Does anyone in the class know what integrity is? Or moral purpose? Do you all have any idea of what those terms mean? Yes, I saw someone raise their hand.
I think that integrity means doing the right thing even when nobody is watching you.
Right. Okay, thank you. And anyone knows what moral purpose is? It's fine if you all don't know, because we'll dive more into it. Do you all think that integrity and moral purpose are good skills to have as leaders? Yeah, okay. Yes, Greg, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I was going to respond yes. Because I think that
Okay.
the followers or the subordinates will look up to you if they see that you're always doing the right thing.
Right, that's good. That's a good point. Thank you. And are you all, as a class, interested in learning about integrity and moral purpose to become better leaders in the future? I would hope so, right? So let's start our presentation. Integrity. So integrity, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, can be defined as the firm adherence to a code of especially moral and artistic values. And I have a quote here about integrity for you, is that the supreme quality for leadership is unquestionably integrity. Without it, no real success is possible, whether it is on a section gang, a football field, in an army, or in an office. And that quote was from Dwight D. Eisenhower. So what does it mean to have integrity as a leader? Well, this is where the person demonstrates qualities of being honest, trustworthy, and reliable. Being equipped with the quality of integrity gives the individual a reason to practice what they preach, in turn taking responsibilities for their actions and mistakes. And in this image here, we can see why it is important to have integrity in the workplace. Integrity in the workplace promotes better leaders, and we all want to be better leaders or even good leaders when we do start becoming a leader. It helps to foster an open and positive work environment for both the leader and the associates. It promotes an ethical approach to decision making. It encourages diversity, equity, and inclusion. It promotes strong and resilient teams, and it actively builds and maintains trust. Moving on to moral purpose. Now, what is moral purpose? Moral purpose can be defined as the value that, when articulated, appeals to the innate sense held by some individuals of what is right and what is worthwhile. Is moral purpose an important skill to have as a leader? Well, yes, as a leader, one should lead with the purpose of making a change and by demonstrating a moral purpose from within, and this will in turn show the associates whom you lead your honest and true intentions, hence making you an exemplary leader. And here we can see the compass, and it's showing you to always take the path of moral purpose. Right. So for our introduction, we start off with a quote, and it is, at the heart of being a leader of integrity is a person who is consistent, honest, and has a moral compass through their behavior. Leading with integrity and moral purpose is a skill that has to be learned and demonstrated through actions and purpose. In this presentation, we will be discussing various aspects of integrity and moral purpose through various situations and topics. I hope that you all will pay attention to learn more about leadership with integrity and moral purpose so you all can employ this as an individual and a future leader in society. Let us begin our presentation with the first topic, which is creating and sustaining an ethical organization. So, what is an organization? Let's first begin by defining that. An organization is a collection of people from various backgrounds, occupations, and skill sets who all come together to form a single platform with common aims and objectives. Organizations face many problems, and the way they respond refers to their ethics as an organization. It is important that an ethical organization is created and sustained as per the code of conduct for all the individuals part of the group or organization. So the members have to act with integrity and moral purpose to thereby create an ethical environment, and the employers and managers should sustain this environment by acknowledging and rewarding integrity and moral purpose. Next, ethics within an organization should be created and sustained by individuals who are part of the organization. There are four qualities which can contribute to increasing the ethical standards within an organization by the individual, and this was discussed by Nash 1990. These four would be: first, critical thinking, and this is the ability to analyze any situation or problem and employ the use of ethics. So you'll be analyzing a problem within the organization, and you would have to think about it in the most ethical way. What is the solution in the most ethical way? The second is possessing integrity, and this skill will be very useful for the organization since the individual will be able to stand up for their beliefs as well as the organization's core values. And this is important because even when faced with a difficulty and there's an easy way out, the individual part of the organization should be able to stand up and do what's right so that it maintains the code of conduct and the core values of the organization. And three, looking at the situation from the outsider's perspective. This is very important as it allows the individual to have concern for the person who are involved or in the situation and their feelings. Four, the motivation to do the right thing. This goes without saying that it involves the moral purpose of a person, and it allows the person to use their morals and values in a situation to do the right thing. And motivation is, it is important that we understand that motivation comes from within. So if we motivate ourselves to always do the right thing, then even when we are part of an organization, we would always be using our moral purpose to do the right thing. So it is important to understand that when an ethical environment is created, there will be objections from persons or rejections of the use of ethics to employ their easy and shorthand way of handling the business of the organization. However, when a problem within the organization is identified, it can be solved with good ethics. An excellent technique to handle issues within the organization is by using the relation leadership model. And we will see a diagram of that on the next slide. Right. So this here is a diagram illustrating the relation leadership model. And this model explains that the ethical process that may be applied in a variety of circumstances to enable members of the organization to collaborate in order to effect good change inside of the organization. So, by using inclusiveness, empowering, and ethical values, we can have a purposeful change. Thanks. Next. So, another technique to solve internal issues in the organization would be to align the organization's common goals and missions with the individuals who are part of the organization. By aligning common goals to the individual's moral purpose, it creates a healthy environment for all members who are working together harmoniously. When organizations do not work together harmoniously and one person has to dictate the flow of the ethics within the organization, it can create problems. One problem can be with the style of leadership that this leader will adapt to. In certain circumstances, leaders adapt poor leadership styles. According to Kellerman 2004, poor leadership styles can either be described as bad as ineffective or bad as unethical. So some leaders may have an ineffective way of getting things done. They will never get it done because their methods are not working. While other bad leaders could get things done, but in the most unethical way possible. Okay, the next slide, we will talk about the ineffective and unethical leaders can be described as toxic leaders. Leaders who are toxic can exhibit some of the following traits. One, the associates being violated by the leaders for basic human rights. Two, allowing associates of the leaders to believe that only this leader can fulfill the needs and goals of the organization. Three, being untruthful to associates and wrongfully assessing a problem. Four, leaders not thinking of the consequences of their actions and how it can affect the associates. So organizations should understand that behaviors are fostered when they are rewarded. In turn, when a negative attribute is seen in an individual part of the organization, it should be addressed and acknowledged for having a negative impact on the organization. While some organizations may handle negative attributes from individuals differently, the most ideal way of handling a situation should correlate with the core values of the organization. On the other hand, rewarding positive attributes of individuals in the organization should be encouraged to promote this type of behavior within the organization. So in the next slide, we will see a picture of someone. I hope that everyone here knows who this person is. And he, just for anyone who may not know, he is Mr. Jack Warner. He was the vice president of FIFA, and he was a leader who was part of a federation geared to promoting events associated with football on the global scale. And I know many of us, if not all, know what FIFA is, right? He was involved in a scandal involving money, and he was forced to retire from this position in 2011 because of his misconduct while in position. So as we draw the situation to a person who we as students and citizens of Trinidad and Tobago are familiar with and whose crimes we do not condone, it is to show that his unethical practices as a leader allowed him to be shown to the world as a very toxic leader. His unethical practices within the organization of FIFA would have gone against the core values and the mission of FIFA. So we as students and future leaders should learn from this situation and adopt a moral purpose filled with integrity and core values. Now we will talk about moral purpose as an act of courage. So, moral courage is the quality of mind and spirit that enables one to face up to ethical challenges firmly and confidently, without flinching or retreating. One of the greatest acts of moral purpose as an act of courage was displayed by Muhammad Ali. He was a legendary boxer who won the World Heavyweight Championship three times prior to the Vietnam War, right? And despite Muhammad Ali being a legendary boxer, he was also a highly respected person for his view on the Vietnam War. He went against the beliefs of war because of his religious beliefs and thus did not participate in the war. So if you all didn't know, he was a Muslim and he was a citizen of of the United States. So this was against his country's rulings and he was stripped of his title and his boxing license. His boxing license was suspended, and this did not change his actions. He, in fact, stayed true to his moral purpose and did not fight for 3.5 years. But when the view of the Vietnamese War changed, his license to box was given back to him. It was not suspended, and he was able to win the championships two times after this. This increased his popularity, and today he is one of the greatest boxers of all time. So this should encourage individuals who may be in leadership roles to always consider moral purpose when making decisions. Although some people may not agree with your decision, once you are sure it stands with your moral purpose, then you should act with courage to defend your decision. And here we have a quote from him. And he said, "He who is not courageous enough to take risk will accomplish nothing in life." Right. Now we're going to talk about assumptions about ethical leadership. A good leader is one who can communicate appropriately and motivate others significantly to forward the mission. Leaders should always demonstrate good ethics and be effective in their moral values to get the goal of the organization fulfilled. There are 8 assumptions which can be made by ethical leadership, which were proposed by Lucas and Anello in 1995. In the next slide, we will talk more about these assumptions. So these assumptions are the main focus when preparing to become an ethical leader. First, letting ethics be the heart of your leadership. This means that just as the heart is the central organ of the body and it dictates the flow of blood throughout the body, so too must ethics be the central focus of your leadership, where it dictates how to go about solving a solution and leading with the utmost integrity. Secondly, your leadership style should be driven by morals and values. This simply means to align your style of leadership with values. The main thing is trying not to be neutral about values when it comes to making a decision as a leader. Rather, be a driven leader who adheres to their values. Third, allowing your personal values to intersect with the values of the organization. Give yourself the opportunity to let your moral purpose and moral compass guide you to the right decision within an organization. When you do the right thing and it is the most ethical decision that could be made out of a problem, then this will allow you to share the same ethical values of the organization. Number 4, leading with ethics can be learned. This goes without saying that through mistakes and life experiences, demonstrating ethics in a situation can be learned. This means that with the solving of one problem with ethics, the next problem would be easier to solve. So if we use ethical values in our first situation in the organization, and we employ these values and we try to adhere to them, in the next situation or problem that occurs, we would be more inclined and more knowledgeable. So it would be easier for us to always solve a solution with using ethical values. Number 5, there has to be a connection between thinking with ethics and acting with ethics in relation to leadership. So associating thoughts and actions are very important when it comes to leadership. And always finding a reason behind each action will help the leader to apply ethics to real life situations easily. Number 6, the development of one's character is crucial to ethical leadership. Looking from an outsider's perspective, the character of a leader would influence the way they lead. So in turn, the leader should develop and enhance their character into an ethical and exemplary one so that their leadership style would be respected and not questioned by any of the associates. 7, the process of leading with ethics is shared. And this simply means that the leader is not always responsible for displaying ethics within the organization. All members of the organization should come together and work ethically and align themselves with the core values of the company. And the final one, which is 8, leaders teach everything they do. So leaders can often be identified as role models in their communities, countries, or even the world. When people look up to leaders, they tend to look at their actions. And when the actions does not display ethical behavior or the leaders don't lead with integrity, the persons looking up to them would think that their behavior is okay and nothing is wrong with it. So great leaders must be those who lead from inside and use their moral compass to direct them to the core principles of the organization. They would also be able to distinguish between ethical and immoral acts. Moving on, we will talk about cultural assumptions. Now, there may be culturally accepted behavior in one country that may be unethical in another country, where people from one nation have varied cultural backgrounds. And it should go without saying that culture can have a significant impact on ethics. Many cultures may differ in many ways, but when it comes to their moral compass and core values, most cultures align on the fact that all leaders should be equipped with integrity and moral purpose in their way of leading people. However, persons in a particular culture may show cultural intolerance to another culture, and we see this happening a lot of times. This is where one culture is disrespected by the other culture, making one culture feel superior to the other one, right? This frequently results in hatred spreading inside a particular group, which gives rise to the formation of minority groups. In this situation, leaders should educate themselves about various cultures and learn to rely on their moral principles and ethical standards to help them and their associates respect the cultures of others. Let's talk about ethical theories and moral purposes. So, this is an important feature in the assessment of an individual's ability to make decisions and their thought process behind it. Learning about an individual's perspective on making ethical decisions can show a future of their leadership style. This is why including morals in a person's leadership style is integral. So, by using the transformational leadership theory, it can aid our current and future leaders to incorporate ethics and morals in their decisions. In the next slide, we will see the transformational leadership theory. Right. Transforming leaders is a concept whereby leaders and followers raise one another to higher levels of morality and motivation. This theory focuses on the fact that associates of the leaders can heavily influence them to do the moral and ethical thing in various situations. To explain this further, when the leader and associate share a relationship which is perceived as symbiotic, this is where each person benefits from the relationship that is being shared, right? It can create motivation to act with purpose on a specific goal of the organization. When leaders know that their moral purpose, integrity, and core values are shared with their associates, they would feel respected and comfortable to make ethical decisions without worrying about opposition. Leaders who are deemed to be transformational would be inspired and driven by their own sets of principles and beliefs. They will be quite likely to encourage others to take inspiration from them, which will encourage others to imitate their behavior and adhere to their moral and ethical standards. And looking at the picture, transformational leadership promotes inspirational motivation. It creates an idealized influence on a person, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. So now I'll pass you over to my colleague Elijah, who will talk more on the topic.
So next we're going to be talking about modeling a moral purpose. So as stated before, moral purpose is a value that when articulated appeals to the innate sense held by some individuals of what is right and what is worthwhile. So if participants admire or identify with another member or leader, they will be more likely to imitate that person's behavior. The social learning theory provides a framework for understanding how individuals learn from others. So, the social learning theory proposed by Albert Bandura suggests that social behavior is learned by observing and imitating the behaviors, attitudes, and emotional reactions of others, and by extension, a similar sense of morality. So there's a quote here from Andrew Ho, who is a graduate and received a citation in the College Park Scholars Public Leadership Program. So he highlights the importance of knowing what your morals, values, and ethics are and gaining practice in handling ethical dilemmas. So he says, I believe the most helpful thing in handling ethical dilemmas is to know yourself well, know what your morals, values, and ethics are, and gain some practice in handling ethical dilemmas. That way, you will have the courage to stand by what you believe in when ethical dilemmas occur. I think this is a good quote because oftentimes people are not fully sure what their morals and values specifically are. So they may be hesitant to stand up for what is right, in fear they may be making a wrong decision. So, vicarious learning or behavioral modeling has important implications for the leadership process. Organizational and community members can learn ethical practices by observing those who model these practices in their leadership approaches. So, an example of this could be you, as the new organizer of a food drive for homeless shelter, advocating for healthier food for this week's drive rather than the cheaper, unhealthier food that minimizes spending. So, this demonstrates social responsibility to the other members of the organization to do a better job at giving healthier options to persons who would not otherwise be able to afford these options. And using a real life example of behavioral modeling by leaders, Cristiano Ronaldo was recently relegated to training with the under 21s and was left out of the squad for the next game due to him refusing to come on as a substitute with 5 minutes left in the game and leaving the stadium early. So, organizational and team members learn by observing how a pair is treated, and that negative consequences can result from such behavior. Sims and Lorenzi refer to this phenomenon as outcome expectation. Participants also might infer that the leader possesses a high degree of integrity and is motivated to do the right thing. The behavior of the leader or the coach in the example I gave then influences team members to act ethically because that's what is reinforced or because they want to avoid punishment for unethical behavior or even both. So, modeling can also have both positive and negative external effects that extend beyond organizational boundaries. So, for example, Ben and Jerry's ice cream modeled a type of socially responsible behavior when they donated pre tax profits to social programs. So, by doing this, Ben and Jerry's attempted to model a moral standard for other business leaders to follow. So, since Ben and Jerry's initiative, many other companies have committed to socially responsible efforts just like them. However, in contrast, companies such as Nike and Apple have been purported to manufacture their goods in sweatshops, indirectly encouraging other companies to do the same to maximize profits. You don't know what a sweatshop is, it's just a crowded workplace with poor, illegal working conditions, oftentimes, poor ventilation, little to no breaks, insufficient lighting, or high or low temperatures. So, another form of modeling is when leaders or participants engage in discussions of ethical issues or bring up ethical dilemmas that can be resolved through an exchange of multiple perspectives. So this can be in the form of meetings or check-ins with staff to raise any ethical or social issues that may being faced in the workplace. So my question to y'all is if you've ever found yourself in an organizational meeting or in a classroom in which someone raised an ethical or moral question around a particular issue your group might have been working on. If no, then it makes sense because it's often hard to know how to approach a conversation about moral questions because leaders and participants would benefit by engaging in conversations that allow people to explore the moral complexities and dimensions of problems or dilemmas, but they often not don't have the the know-how on how to engage in discussions that are productive. So, Bird and Waters provide an interesting notion of modeling or influencing ethical behavior through verbal exchanges or moral talk, or what they refer to as dialogic leadership. So, the dialogic leader initiates discussions with the peers and the members about what is ethical and what the material interests of individuals are. So, dialogic leadership or moral talk can be used in student organizations or other groups as a way to model ethical approaches and to help create and sustain an ethical environment. So, for example, a student president of an honor society includes on the meeting agenda a discussion of the nature of the group's test files. So, a member speaks up at the meeting about her concern that a few of the exams in the files have been stolen. So, she then asks the members if maintaining those files is the kind of activity the group should engage in, knowing that this is a violation of the college's honor code. So a discussion can then ensue about whether or not the activity is counter to the organization's mission and the organization's values of academic excellence and integrity. Individuals often hesitate to participate in moral talk or discussions about ethical dilemmas, and although the topic of ethics is encountered by individual leaders and participants, little discourse about ethics takes place among group members. So, a lack of discussion about ethics is referred to as moral muteness. So, reasons for this include avoidance of complex problems with moral overtones, a protection of the positional leader's own managerial flexibility in solving problems, which just means that leaders of the group are often hesitant to disparage one member or more of the group to be able to solve an issue. And another one is avoidance of dealing with varying ideological or moralistic perspectives. So, all of this can potentially inhibit the problem solving process. As well, group members also may avoid ethical discussions due to their own ethical illiteracy, meaning that they're not sure exactly what their values are and they don't want to put forward anything in case they change their mind or in case it's not the right thing. They don't want any scrutiny from other group members. So the consequence of not modeling this through conversation or discussions is the neglect of moral issues on an environment that is indifferent to moral considerations. It's the shared responsibility of members and leaders to initiate moral talk and to avoid moral muteness. This can be in the form of sexual harassment by a particular coworker in an office space that may go unspoken about, or even a group member who is constantly late on deadlines. So, for the moral effect to occur, the language in moral talk has to be connected with experiences and expectations of people involved in the organization, and is most effective when the dialogue is used to identify problems, issues, and advocate and criticize the policies and justify and explain decisions in particular situations. So, moving on to ethical decision making models, we're faced with ethical dilemmas on a daily basis that don't have readily identifiable solutions, and that leaders and participants of a particular group would need to confront and resolve to be able to move on. So, the relational leadership model discussed before, with its emphasis on inclusive and process oriented leadership to achieve results for the common goal, suggests that leaders and members both be included in addressing ethical dilemmas. So there are several approaches you can use to resolve ethical dilemmas. Some situations may require a professional code of conduct. So, for example, healthcare workers are bound to uphold a certain level of standards and patient care put in place by their professional associations. For example, radiographers are bound by something that we call the ALARA principle, which just means as low as reasonably achievable, meaning that we try to give our patients as little radiation as we can, which meaning doing images, doing at the least amount of images we can, or not repeating images. So not all situations can be resolved through these professional codes or organizational standards, and they may require human judgment and analysis to determine whether a situation represents an ethical dilemma or just something else like a personality conflict between two members. So Kidder defines tough choices as those that pit one right value against another. Thus, the really tough choices involve deciding between two core moral values that conflict rather than those where there is a clearer wrong and right choice. Therefore, Kidder provides a framework for examining right versus right choices using a four dilemma paradigm model. So these include justice versus mercy, where fairness and equity conflict with compassion, empathy, and love. So this could mean turning in one of your loved ones, your sister, your brother, to the police because they committed a crime rather than keeping it to yourself. Next one is short term versus long term, where immediate needs run counter to future goals. Individual versus community, like self versus others, or small group versus a large group. This could mean you not eating for the night because your family needs to eat and you thinking about that versus doing the quote unquote selfish thing and eating rather than giving your family the food. And last is truth versus loyalty, where honesty competes with commitment, responsibility, and promise keeping. So oftentimes these models overlap and one situation can employ more than one of these models. So Kidder also provides three principles for ethical decision making. So these include ends-based thinking, best known by the saying, do whatever produces the greatest good for the greatest number, in the essence of determining who will be hurt and who will be helped and weighing the options by quantity. Rule-based thinking, where the thought process is to follow only the principle that you would want everyone else to follow and doing what we're supposed to do rather than what we think might work. Care-based thinking, or putting love for others first, also known by saying do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if we go back to the last slide, we can see here a diagram that displays that the four paradigm model often conflicts with the ethical decision making, meaning that truth versus loyalty falls under care-based thinking, but also ends-based thinking. Short-term versus long-term is the same thing, and short-term versus long-term and justice versus mercy conflicts with ends-based thinking and rule-based thinking. So another informal decision-making model is commonly referred to as the newspaper test. So this refers to thinking about whether you would be comfortable with your actions, behaviors, or decisions in a particular situation appearing in an article in the newspaper for everyone to see. So moving on to ethical principles and standards. Beauchamp and Childress proposed 5 principles of biomedical ethics based on Aristotle's ethical principles, which were later adopted by Karen Strom-Kitchener for the counseling psychology field. So these 5 ethical principles are as follows. Respecting autonomy, which is providing leaders and members of an organization with freedom of choice, allowing individuals to freely develop their values, and respecting the right of others to act independently. So this has to do with assuming that individuals have a level of competence to make rational and informed decisions and to even make mistakes with decisions that they make. Next is doing no harm or non-maleficence. So this is fostering an environment that is free from harm to others, both physically and psychologically. And the leaders and members of a group organization should avoid engaging in actions that risk harming others. Next is benefiting others or beneficence. This is promoting the interests of the organization above personal interests or self gain. It's the notion of putting what is best for the group first rather than what is beneficial to oneself. Next is being just or justice, which is just treating people fairly and equally among the group. Being Next is being faithful or fidelity. This is keeping promises, being faithful, and being loyal to the group organization. Because if you as a leader or member violate the principle of fidelity or the trust in the relationship with others in the group, it's difficult for others or even the person whose promises you've broken to develop a trusting relationship with you in the future. So, in conclusion, this chapter highlighted the importance of the relational leadership model and its usefulness in fostering an organization that works together. It's only being inclusive to the members of the group that the organization can use the talents and abilities of its members effectively and creatively. An organization should strive to encourage all members to take an active role in the group, and by being ethical in its values, can hold the members to a high standard of behavior to ultimately achieve the group's goals. So I implore you, if you take anything from this chapter or presentation, is to take your time to process and come up with the best decision for situations in your life, and thinking as well what consequences it may have on others rather than acting out of impulse. So that concludes our presentation, and these are some of the resources we used. And thank you for listening.
Okay, if there are no questions, I will stop the recording.